Neil Kruger. I'm 95 years of age. I'll be 96 around Thanksgiving time. I enlisted in the Navy in August of 1944, graduated from Warren High School in 1944 in June, and I never got into any fighting because I never finished. Well, the war came to an end before I finished training, so I never got into any.
So where did you go to basic training at, Neil?
I took my basic training in Jacksonville, Florida, and from Jacksonville I went to Norman, Oklahoma, to the Naval Air Technical Training Center.
Can we go back a little bit, Neil, to what was basic training for you like? What was that like for you?
Well, for me it was very, very easy. I had a really good commander. His name was Chief Hazen, and back up still further, the Navy didn't even know if they were going to accept me, because when I got to Florida, they put me in sick bay because they said I had albumin in my urine. And so even after I was in the sick bay for some time, they put me in a hospital in Norman, Oklahoma, or in Jacksonville, Florida. And I remember there was a hurricane warning at that time too, so they got us all into a building where it was very substantial, so it wouldn't cave in on us. And now see, I went in the middle of September, but I got out of the hospital so late that I was into a marching group of people like me in Jacksonville, Florida at Armistice Day in 1944. Mm-hmm. I marched in Jacksonville, Florida, because I was so far behind. And then when I graduated with one of the last classes of people that took basic training in Jacksonville.
What was the weather like there?
Well, the weather was very good because it was the fall of the year, and really nice weather at that time, because I thought, I know in the summer it's really hot and humid, but the time of the year that I was there, it was very comfortable. So
what did your parents think of you going into the service?
Well, my dad had enlisted in the Navy for World War I, and I know they weren't happy particularly. My mother was not very happy, but I knew that I needed to get into this war because those Germans, and I'm a German, needed to get help to finish it off as soon as possible, because Hitler was doing very bad things. We didn't know how, really exactly how bad, but we had a pretty good idea, or an inkling of an idea of what he'd been doing. So, yeah. And like I say, I was very fortunate not to have to, because I was not only set back in basic training, but when I got to Norman, Oklahoma, and got training for 50 caliber and 30 caliber machine guns in an airplane. See, I wanted to fly in the worst kind of a way, and so I got into actually I was so small, I only weighed 125 pounds at that time.
Wow.
So I could fit into these turret gunners down in the bottom where a tiny person could fit in there, and fire at these planes that were trying to knock us out of the sky.
So you want to be one of them bottom gunners?
Yeah, I wanted to be well, I didn't know if I was going to be a gunner, but I wanted to be flying somehow.
Okay.
Anyway, well, then when I got to Norman, Oklahoma, gee, we never had any water around here back in the 1930s. It was extremely dry. I can remember one time me and the Safransky boys and maybe somebody else was up to the river where our low water crossing is in Alma, and there was a little bit of water in there, and we waded around in there, but there was no water to swim, so I didn't know how to swim. So here I'm in the Navy and I don't know how to swim. Well, then when I get to Norman, Oklahoma, why, you're supposed to learn how to swim, but nobody is teaching you how to swim. You got to try to learn it on your own. Well, I got a big rash on my body, and I went to the sick bay, and they sent me to the hospital because they said I had scarlet fever.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and this is really bad to have scarlet fever. So while I was in the hospital being treated for scarlet fever, I got treated with penicillin, which penicillin had scarcely been on the market a short time at this time. This is now 1945. Right across the ward that was right across the hall from scarlet fever was the mumps ward. Don't you suppose I caught mumps? So there's another 4 weeks. Another 4 weeks, so that's 8 weeks shot out of the time when I should
You were a
be.
walking petri dish, weren't you?
Yeah. So finally I get back out of the hospital and gets back, not anywhere near anybody that I've started to train with, but started back again. And I went back to try to swim again. And don't you suppose in about a month or so I broke out on a rash again. Now I kind of think afterwards, many years, that maybe I was allergic to the chlorine in the water. I'm just making a wild guess. But anyway, they said I had scarlet fever again.
Yeah.
So I'm back in the hospital again for another month.
Wow.
So that sets me back 3 weeks. And so instead of graduating when I should have after 14 weeks, why it's another 12, about 29, 30 weeks. 30 weeks, which eats up a lot of wartime. After I left Norman, Oklahoma, why I went to radar training in Purcell, Oklahoma, which was just a kick and a hop down the road about 80 miles from Norman.
Selma, Oklahoma?
Still in Oklahoma, yeah.
Okay.
And that was a short thing, only 2 weeks for radar training. And from there, I went to Pensacola, Florida, and for skeet shooting. We did skeet shooting. Well, that's to practice aiming,
Okay.
skeet shooting. And it was really, that was really the nicest place I was in, because we were in Fort Parancus, which was an old fort that the Navy took over, and we were in little Quonset huts. Just, you know what Quonset huts are after we come home, only this was a tiny thing about maybe 8 by 10 or 8 by 12 or something like that, one on each side and a bunk in the back, and there was just 3 of us in there. Kruger, Lawrence, and McInerney, and the other 2 were from Massachusetts.
That's another question, Neil. Did you know anybody while you were in the service? I mean, from Warren or surrounding area?
No,
Nobody at all?
no. I met a guy from Argyle that I didn't know at one place that I was in the service, and I can't remember exactly where it was.
You remember his name?
Morin, M-O-R-I-N.
Okay.
I think it was Robert Morin, but I wasn't sure about the short name. It was really nice there in Pensacola, and we could go to movies and everything. Well, even in Norman, why they had they had dances and stuff, and one of the guys that played there was Tex Beneke, and he had an orchestra that was part of Glenn Miller's orchestra, because Glenn Miller was in the service, but this Tex Beneke came when I was in Norman, and I went to that dance to see him play.
Sure, yeah.
But getting back to Pensacola, like I say, it was really nice staying there. After we were done skeet shooting, why, then they sent me to another place in Florida, Lake City, Florida, Naval Air Station in Lake City.
Okay.
And in Lake City, all we were doing there was this and mess cooking. We'd have to take our turn mess cooking every so often. And then, of course, we're sitting around all the time, and I found out that you didn't have to have any special qualifications. If you just got in your 8 hours of flying time a month, you'd get a 50% increase in your rate, in your money.
Flight pay.
Flight pay, yeah, flight pay.
Sure.
Well, I was getting $66 a month to Seaman First Class. I bumped from $52 when I entered the service, so 66 was pretty good too, but 99, hey boy, that was really good money. So all you had to do was report to the flight place where the planes were taking off and practicing, put on a parachute, which nobody gave you any instructions, didn't even know where in the hell the ripcord was, and get up and fly in this plane. And oh boy, the first time I got up there, and holy shit, there's water all over around down there, and I still don't know how to swim.
Oh, you're flying above the water.
Well, no, we're flying over land, but there's still lots of lakes and things.
Oh, okay, yeah.
We weren't out over the ocean, but I threw up. Yeah, I threw up big. But after a few times, I didn't bother him anymore. So
Did you fly quite a bit then, or?
The rest of the time I was there, which I think was about 3 or 4 months. Yeah, I went and got my time in so that I could collect that flight pay. That was a big incentive to get 50%
You bet, yeah.
increase in your, and so then as long as we weren't doing anything and the war was over, why, my dad was not feeling very well and he needed me to come back home, so I got out after 19 months in the service, and I got back home to farm with my dad.
Okay.
I came out of the Naval Air Station in Minneapolis, and out of the whole time I was in the service, I only had one leave to come home. Now, all these dang youngsters that get in here nowadays, they go and get basic training, and then they come home and have a nice visit at home. I never got home until...
Till you're discharged?
No, I did get home in December of 1945.
Okay.
And then when I got discharged, that was in February of 1946.
Okay. And you never came home in between?
Never.
Never did come home, okay.
No, they weren't giving anybody any leaves to come home then, because the war was going on and they might be sending you to battle someplace almost any time.
Okay. So you spent most of your time Florida and
Oklahoma.
Oklahoma, yeah. When you were going to these duty stations, did you train or bus or?
Train.
Train?
Troop trains.
Okay, yeah.
I probably from Pensacola to Lake City, because it was very close, probably it was a bus then, but all the other places Jacksonville to Norman was troop training from, well, I can't remember how it went to Purcell. That was a short distance to him, probably by bus there. But then from there to back to Pensacola was a troop train. I remember taking the train to Houston and New Orleans and that way.
Okay. So Neil, was you in the service, do you wish you'd have done anything different?
Wish I'd have done it different.
Done anything different while you were in the service, other than learn how to swim?
Yeah, I think I would have liked to have been a pharmacist mate or something else like that. Other than I was stupid to just being wanting to get in an airplane and fly because hell, I was probably going to get shot out of the sky. I don't know. I suppose they thought because I was a farm kid, I'd be really good with a gun. But I don't think I was really that good with it.
Well, I don't think you were stupid. Maybe young and dumb, but you weren't stupid. I mean, if you volunteered to go into the...
How young people are, why...
Yeah. So, after you got out, you farmed?
Yeah, I farmed with my dad. My dad took me in farming with him. And see, now I have a younger brother that's 15 years younger than I am. So, my dad and we farmed together until he retired. He could get Social Security in 1960. He only had to pay in 6 years. But my brother was going to college at NDSU. He graduated from Argyle in 1959. So I took him in as a partner with me in 1960, taking my dad's place. So I either farmed with my dad or my brother all of my life. And we farmed southeast of Argyle and Alma Township.
Okay, yeah. And so what year did you retire then?
Well, technically I retired in 1991, but that didn't keep me from being out there on the farm for many years afterwards. Matter of fact, it's only been about 7 or 8 years that I didn't mow the grass out there on the farm.
Sure. And what crops did you raise?
Well, to begin with, my dad had a dairy farm, so it was mostly raising hay and oats and some corn for corn silage. When the government came along with asking you to have bases for wheat, he didn't have hardly any bases of wheat because he only raised a few acres of wheat. So we had a wheat basin, a barley basin, a corn base, but we didn't have all the other acres. If you expanded, had to be oats or flax or something like that. And
sure.
As years went by, in the 60s, we started to raise sunflowers, and that turned out to be a really good crop because the government had a program where almost everybody had some acres that didn't qualify to be in anything, so they either had to summerfill them or they could rent them out for some other crop like sunflowers. And we would rent those acres for about 20 or 25, sometimes $30 an acre. And when you never had sunflowers on them before, we had some pretty good crops of them.
Cool, yeah. So Neil, is there anything you wish you'd, when you're in the service, do you wish you'd done anything different? Well, you already said you'd like to have been a pharmacist or whatever. Is there anything you want to add to this about your military career?
No, I don't know. I don't know. I guess the only thing I can say, the Lord must have saved me because Walt Hillman's in this gym. Walter Hillman, he is 2 years older than I am, and he was drafted after I went into the service, and he saw very severe service in the Pacific, because he was drafted and he didn't be sick like I was. So I'm extremely fortunate and lucky. I think the Lord must have looked after me. The only thing I can think about is when I was going to grade school, if it was really cold or so on, I didn't go. If it was 20 below zero or more, I just didn't go to school. And so maybe that safety. Well, I didn't catch any childhood diseases other than measles. I had measles, and chicken pox. But outside of these other severe, like scarlet fever or diphtheria or things like that, I think we did get shots for diphtheria when I was going to grade school.
Okay.
Maybe it was high school, I can't remember. But as far as my service, well, I had friends in my service, in a class, I mean, that stayed in the South, and the only thing I think about was, well, maybe I should have stayed in the South, because I hate cold weather with a passion, and here I'm back here.
You and I both, yeah.
Yeah.
It was okay when you're younger, but as you get older, it's not so much.
Well, even when I was younger, I
Didn't care for it, huh?
didn't care for it, no. My mother and I were very much alike. My dad, he could take cold weather, but my mother didn't like cold weather and didn't care for it, and I didn't. Guess I'm lucky I took after my mother in that respect.
Yeah. Well, Neil, I want to thank you for doing this interview, and thank you for your service.